Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us for today's webinar on the key SRE and DevOps metrics to gain insights into your operational health. So our view is that MTTA and MTTR are great starting points, but that they're not enough. So to that end, we're really excited today to share some holistic measures and best practices that you can employ starting today. Before we kick off, here are a few quick housekeeping items. So we'd like to keep this webinar as interactive as possible so that we can all learn from one another. So please include your questions in the Q&A window, and we'll also have some polling. So we'll answer all of your questions during our live Q&A at the end of the presentation. After the webinar, we'll also be sharing this recording with you all so that you can share with your teams. So as a quick high-level overview of what we'll be walking through today, so we'll go through some top measurement challenges and pain points, as well as key metrics and how they evolve as organizations mature. Also really excited to walk through some case studies and demos and more to really help bring these concepts to life. So without further ado, let's introduce our speakers for today. I'm Ancy, and I have the privilege of leading product marketing here at Blameless. Over to you, Nir.
I'm Nir. I'm leading the customer success organization here at Blameless.
And I'm Paul Q, sales engineer from Blameless. Excited to show you guys what we got today.
Awesome. Cool. So let's kick it off with a few polls to kick off the interaction. So first up, which of these metrics are you measuring today? A, MTTA and MTTR. B, planned work versus unplanned work. C, business impact. D, none. Or E, other. We'll wait for about a minute and then we'll share the results. Awesome. So looking at the results, super interesting. It looks like over 70% of you are measuring MTTA and MTTR, which is great. A really large amount of you are also looking at the business impact of service disruptions, which is also a really, really healthy sign. And 40% of you are also looking at planned work, such as features versus unplanned work, which is also a really great measure to understand how to prioritize and plan for capacity. 10% of you are not currently looking at any metrics. So super interesting. Cool. Next poll. Which challenges do you encounter when it comes to metrics? A, the data doesn't exist or is siloed across tools. B, we don't know what to measure. C, we lack cross-functional alignment on what to measure. D, assembling reports and insights takes too much toil. Or E, let us know in the comments. Going once, going twice. Great. So here are the results. So over 60% of you mentioned that assembling reports and insights takes too much toil, and we definitely see that very frequently as well. Over 40% of you mentioned that we lack cross-functional alignment on what to measure, and nearly 40% of you mentioned that data is siloed across different tools or simply doesn't exist. Great. So thank you so much for sharing. Super, super interesting to learn from our peers. So here are some of the top customer pain points and challenges that we typically see software and infrastructure teams encounter from working with many organizations across cloud native startups all the way up to Fortune 500 enterprises. The first is a lack of data. Your data is fragmented across your APM, ticketing, chat ops, and other tools. And even worse, it's typically also siloed across teams that run at different speeds. So a lot of it is tribal knowledge or it simply doesn't exist. The second challenge is no feedback loop. So as with the previous point, there's limited to no integration between incidents, postmortems, and follow-up action items, and planned work and the customer experience. So it becomes really challenging to understand how it all ties together, as well as pinpoint how to actually improve customer experience versus constantly being redirected by unplanned work and incidents. The third is the blank slate. Traditional APM and analytics tools are really great for insights, but without a baseline of metrics that are prescriptive and based on operational best practices, it's hard to know where to start. And finally, metrics are not one size fits all. So what works for one team won't necessarily work for another, and everything needs to be put and couched in the right context. So here are a few of the key metrics that we've seen organizations use. For all metrics, the incentives across cross-functional software teams, across development and operations and product all need to be aligned. And really, if there's anything that you take away from this presentation, it's that metrics aren't there to crack the whip. Rather, they're simply a tool to help with planning. And we like to think of them as the compass to help teams go down the right maturity path. And if they're not being met, there should be an effort to understand why without blame. Maybe they're not being set in an achievable manner. So I'll hand it off to Nir to add some more color and examples to this slide.
Thanks. So when we look at the metrics, as NC said, we want to make sure that, we have the right context, and the right context can be the business aspects that related to those metrics in the past few weeks and few days. But the bottom or the end goal of the metrics, and this is something that we all need to remember, is to use as a compass for us as the department, the SRE departments, engineering company-wide, as a compass whether we are progressing to our next maturity level that we want to achieve. And that's the idea. The idea is that we are not measuring just for measuring, and we don't need to measure all the metrics in the world. We need to choose those metrics that can help us to improve ourselves and move us to the next level as a department, as an organization, as a company, and so on. Next slide, please. So when we talk about metrics evolvement, we usually start, when we don't have anything, we start with what we call a fragile model, where we choose a very high level of metrics. So for example, it can be number of incidents and customer tickets without breaking down into lower levels. And other example is the majority of incidents that are only SEV 1 and SEV 0. And then we move over time to be a unified metrics system where we look at a deeper triage of the incidents, and we look at distribution between different severity, even the lower ones. We start to see that we are spending around 30 to 50% of our time, of our engineering time, on unplanned work. And then we move to the advanced level, that where we start to think about our SLOs, how the code changes and deployments impact our metrics. And we start to be a more healthier organization, where we see that now we move from majority of incidents used to be SEV 0 and SEV 1, now the majority are in SEV 2 and SEV 3, which is what we want to be. And we become a leader in our metrics organization, which means that we now look at all the different slices and dices that we have as organization. We start to track everything automatically, and at some point we actually also start to predict. So we start to build those metrics that can give us the prediction of what will happen in the next release based on the different changes in the codes. Next slide, please. So I will give you a real example from one of our Blameless customers in e-commerce that during the first half of 2019, they didn't really add any real tracking. And we gave them the basic of tracking ideas, such as the cost of time on incidents, meaning how much, what is the cost of the hours that engineering is spending on incidents, and track the incidents by the different type, SEV 0 until SEV 3, and the planned versus unplanned work. So during the first half of the year, they build all those metrics, they start to collect it. And in the end of June, we viewed it together. And we saw that everything, we have all the collection that we want, and then they ran it through the entire 2019. What we discovered with them in the end of the year is that on average, they are spending $200,000 on unplanned work. And that's on average for one team only. And majority of the incidents, across all the severities, happened on the product page load time and on the checkout process failures. And from that point, we started to do a deeper triage to understand what are causing it. Is it too much changes in the code? Is it lack of quality? Do we need to do some improvements with our third parties services? And during Q1, we actually helped them to build that plan. And what we discovered, or what they discovered, is that the database required some improvements on the queries that fetch the product pages. And they had some API connection challenges and error handling that could be improved to resolve some of the incidents without actually creating those incidents. And they discovered that during the checkout, one of the fraud services provider is not performing as expected. So they went out and searched a better fraud provider, and they did updates on the CDN to capture dynamic content better and speed the dynamic content of the product pages, and to cache the static pages for longer period of time. Overall, during the first half of, or in the first Q1 in 2020, when they ran the results again, ran the reports, they saw that they improved, the incidents by 76%, and the unplanned work reduced by 40% to around 27% overall. Now it's still high. We usually want to have unplanned work around 10%, but that was the start for them. And now basically, now they need to look at other places on the product lifecycle and the user's lifecycle to understand where are the other places that they can improve themselves. Next slide. So now we will show you a live demo of the metrics, and we will, Paul will do the demo for you. So Paul, all yours.
Great, thank you. I'm going to share my screen here. All right, great. So everyone should be able to see my screen. And I don't want to scare anyone away. There's a lot of numbers and graphs here on the screen that you're seeing, but just to kind of give you an insight in terms of what Blameless can provide, just for some context setting as well, I'm sure we have some first-time listeners looking at Blameless and seeing how we can provide these metrics and insights around their incident flow. So at a very high level, Blameless is providing a way for organizations to streamline and automate the majority of their incident resolution process. So as you can imagine, by having all that information flowing through Blameless, whether it be anything relating to the incident or relating to the post-mortem or the retrospective, really that's really where Blameless can then provide a lot of that data to then be able to have these conversations with the organization, with various teams and leaders, to make sure that our focus is allocated appropriately. So just to kind of go through some of the metrics we put together here, this is actually one that I built out for a customer use case, But really, we want to have a logical flow in terms of how we read the metrics that we're seeing on this screen. So at the very top, what we're seeing is incident creation. And I've built out this tile so that we can understand over the last 28 days, the number of incidents that are being created. So if we go and hover over these various points and understanding kind of how many incidents we're creating, we can then get some insights and at least a temperature check of, you know, the type of activity that we're seeing in terms of incident creation, just to kind of give you some insights, understanding, you know, why are we seeing an uptick in the number of incidents that are being created? Were there certain events that occurred recently that we can tie these to? So again, just providing that context around why we're seeing this type of behavior in terms of the incidents that we're creating within Blameless. The next piece then, if we kind of dig deeper, is that this will then provide you with some insights in terms of, okay, well, we're seeing that type of activity or that type of trend in terms of incident creations. Now, what types of incidents are being created, and basically being able to break that down by severity. You'll see there on the left, and we can kind of look at this one, I guess, section here, this row as kind of a singular approach as well. So from here, I can then understand, okay, within the last 28 days, it looks like the majority of our incidents were customer incidents. And by looking at this metric here, I can then understand, okay, it looks like we had a fair number of Sev zeros, which in our case would be the highest severity in terms of the number of incidents that we're seeing. So that's a little concerning, right? If we see a high uptick in terms of the customer impacting incidents, you know, this then gives us an understanding of what types of issues we're seeing as an organization. So effectively becoming a leading indicator. And I think that's really where we want our customers to be from a metric tracking standpoint. Now, going deeper into that, we can then say, okay, well, at a very high level, if I'm just jumping into this, I can then understand we've had 35 incidents in the last 28 days. Now, that number can mean a lot of different things. So with that kind of in mind, I've broken those down here into the various severity levels. So again, just providing the visuals in terms of understanding at a very high level and kind of taking a quick look, what are we seeing? And then breaking that down into more granularity around the number per, you know, the different severity levels that we have here. Now, if we go below that, we'll then be able to understand kind of the last two rows there of understanding how much time we're spending. You know, I know from the poll, a lot of customers, or rather a lot of listeners today, are seeing that, you know, MTT type metrics are one of the metrics that we're tracking. And this is certainly a reflection of that. We do have various MTT metrics as well that you can look at it in the term of like these kind of number tile type formats. But from here, this will also give us an understanding, again, similar to that incident creation at the top, just a visual of understanding kind of the behaviors and the trends that we're seeing as well. So we're seeing that over the course of the last 6 months, we can then see that the actual impact duration of the actual incident is going lower and lower, which is, you know, a good indicator for us to understand. But this allows us to then see, you know, why, you know, what's causing this behavior? Do we change anything? Do we improve anything? If we're seeing an uptick, you know, is this something that we need to go ahead and start discussing and having, you know, some sort of solution in place in terms of trying to get that number down? Obviously, the reasons kind of leading to the uptick or the downtick in the amount of time we're spending in incidents could be a number of different things. It could just be due to something that's out of our control, right? It could be something where one of our third-party providers had an outage. So, you know, effectively, then that impacts our business and how, you know, basically being able to show that information through these various metrics in our dashboards that I have within reliability insights. So really, this is kind of that aspect there, what we're seeing. And then again, along that same theme, we then want to understand, okay, well then from there, how much time are we spending on various incidents? And then you'll be able to see here that we can break these down by incident type. And I have it set up where, again, going with that last 28-day window, and you can certainly, you know, adjust that time frame to say, okay, we want to look at the last 14 days, last 7 days, to really get very fine-tooth in terms of understanding the scope that we're looking at as well. So in terms of total time that we spent on incidents, we can then break that down here. And again, with that similar theme from above, we can then understand what the average amount of time we're spending on these incidents as well, and breaking those down by types. So one of the things that we talked about kind of before in our previous slides is around that concept of unplanned versus planned work. I think that's one of the things that's really critical with a lot of organizations. And you could use this metric at a kind of global organizational scale and break those down to the kind of lower levels of understanding each team, each department, to really then get an understanding of that time that wasn't spent on product or development of whatever offering that you would have at your organization. The reason why that's important, as you would imagine, is that this way, by having that visibility around unplanned time, and this could be outages, any sort of incidents that are occurring, that's great for the different individuals and teams to understand in terms of where they're spending the majority of their time, the last week or the last quarter. But also, if you think about it as well, from a high level perspective, this then allows for other teams to have an understanding of how much time you're spending on development, so they can appropriately allocate time based off of the trends that we're seeing with different teams. Like Nir was mentioning, we want to get that number down as much as we can in terms of unplanned incidents, but it's kind of a double-edged sword, right? If you have a lot of incidents, it takes a lot of time to go through those incidents, but at the end of the day, you're using that incident time as an opportunity to then build those skills and ready your team so that they can really tackle these incidents in the future, and getting that time to respond, time to resolve much lower. And on the flip side, if you don't have that many incidents, it might look good for the organization, but then your team is becoming more stale, more static in terms of being able to respond to those, being in those situations where they're ready. It's muscle memory, right? The more you're able to practice, the more you're able to build those skills, get those experiences around dealing with that, being able to document that. And that's really where Blameless helps. By having those incidents, that really provides an opportunity then to have your team and your organization to understand, why are we seeing these incidents? What fixes do we put in place? Who do we pull in? How do we disseminate that knowledge, that experience across the entire team, so that each individual contributor is just as impactful as your most senior member? So of course, this type of dashboard can be fully customized, and there's a lot of different use cases we have there. But if you have any great suggestions that you'd want to share with the rest of the group today, feel free to throw those in the chat, and we'll be happy to kind of discuss as well. But from here, really what you're seeing is that we want to dig deeper, right? We want to get an understanding of, why are we seeing 26 set zeros? How do we take a look at that? And from here, you can then go into the instance view within Blameless to then understand, okay, these are the different types of incidents we want to focus on. Maybe you want to only focus on set zeros under a specific incident type within a specific window of time. And then from there, we can dig deeper into kind of understanding what those incidents were. Again, going back to that idea of, okay, was it something that happened internally that caused this incident, or was it something that was kind of out of our control, maybe due to our cloud provider having a brief outage or something to that effect, right? So this way we have all that context because we're having all that incident data flowing through Blameless. So from here, we'll go back into the slides and we'll jump in here. Just to recap kind of what we've covered. I know that was a quick kind of 10-15 minute demo there, but really the key features that we want to focus on is that this data, because we're capturing this all through Blameless, because all those different metadata, the different field information that we have related to the incident is being captured, we can then quickly pull up these insights. Metrics are certainly a very opinionated topic, and it's very hard to really get valuable metrics that provide a lot of clear information to organizations, and we understand that. So what we really want to do is, where we can help, certainly in terms of providing those insights based off our customer base, we're glad to share that information. But also, because we're capturing all that information, you now have the ability to then kind of understand kind of what information we're capturing, how can we tinker this data to make sure that it reflects and really tells that story, tells that message to leadership, to individual contributors. And the next point there are focus metrics and dashboards. Because it's so customizable, really, you can then have different viewpoints that you see within the organization reflected in these dashboards as well. So this way we can have, at a very high level, we just want to understand kind of number of incidents we're seeing. At a very kind of low individual contributor level, we can understand kind of how much time we're spending on these incidents from an individual contributor standpoint. So really being able to provide those types of metrics as well for various different viewpoints. And then cross-functional alignment, right? So understanding that, that one metric of planned versus unplanned. If we can get an understanding and at least some sort of number around how much time we're spending on unplanned incidents, you can kind of imagine kind of all the things you could do there, right? So by understanding that, it has an impact across the entire organization at multiple levels. For individuals, they can then say, hey, this is the type of information that we're gathering, and this is how much time we're spending on these incidents. This is what I'm doing on my day-to-day. At a managerial level, you can then say, okay, hey, this is kind of what we're looking at there. We should kind of plan accordingly based off of the information that we see in the last quarter. And at the kind of higher director level, we'll go through those different personas in the next slide here. They can then understand, what can we commit to the business, right? What can we have delivered with high reliability in the sense that we can really be confident in those types of delivery dates and those deadlines. That really provides that type of insight for that kind of top level persona as well. So from here, just kind of recap what I just went through. These are the different kind of main personas that we really want to help provide visibility and benefits around in terms of having these metrics here. So again, going to that individual contributor, that practitioner level, there's a lot of work that individual contributors do. Sometimes that data can be lost, and it really can cause and start kind of building some unhappiness, some uneasiness around individual contributors, especially if there are some high stress incidents that are occurring, all kind of within a close time frame, which, as you know, can sometimes happen. So this then allows and gives the confidence to those contributors in saying, hey, this is how much work I'm doing. These are how many incidents I've been a part of. I can now, with data, show the value that I have as an individual to the organization in terms of the benefits that I bring around resolving incidents quickly, providing my experience and how to improve that moving forward. So you'll see there in terms of the example metrics, hours and incidents, and also understanding the incident roles within those incidents for those individuals as well. And then the manager, again, the true capacity. How can I forecast, what things I could deliver from a product standpoint, without understanding how much time we're spending. There might be some months, some quarters where it's just a lot of incidents that are happening that, we're spending time on. And obviously everyone wants to help the business grow and be successful. So, by understanding the amount of time we're spending on unplanned incidents, this then gives visibility to the manager, to the team leads, and understanding, because we've spent this much time in the last quarter, hey, let's allocate that much time for the current quarter as we're planning to say, hey, this is how much time we want to spend or we want to anticipate in terms of working on incidents, on unplanned work. And then we can go ahead and start planning around that. And again, from there, not only is it impacting the individual team, but external teams that you're working with as well can also plan around you in terms of the features that they're building and the products that they're building that can rely on your team as well. So this really understands from an organization standpoint how they can best effectively be productive from a building standpoint as well. And then execs in line of business, right? The less we leave kind of questions out there, the more we're able to then plan confidently and be able to then provide these different results and be able to deliver to the business. So metrics like these will be things like incident count per team across the organization. So that way we can understand, how much time we're spending there across the departmental areas of focus. So understanding, okay, if we're seeing a high ticket instance with this one team, how do I allocate resources so that we can reduce that stress across those individuals. And then, as every business is focused on the business impact in terms of the financial aspect. So, this is kind of an area where you can kind of take it as you wish, but basically from a business standpoint, if your product goes down or is unavailable, there's potential dollars being lost for every second that service is down or that product is down. So this also gives at least a temperature check from the exec standpoint of the financial impact of these incidents. So this is another great way to go and provide that information as well. Again, the intent here being that we want to provide those leading indicators, just more context around what we're seeing as an organization, and not to be used as a way of associating blame or really having that negative culture. So metrics are really something that it's really an organization-wide initiative where, especially around incidents, everyone needs to be on the same page in terms of what the intent is and how we're to use these metrics. So with that information, really what we want to do is provide that data for operational meetings or operational reviews. So the main goal, as every organization is striving towards, is to shift that reliability more left, right? The more we can prepare before something goes live or is out in the wild, the better we can then kind of not only predict, kind of forecast, but also be able to then anticipate things that can happen. And that only works by having the insight into the data. So measuring, contextualize the information that we have there to make sure that we have all the different data points that we need to then fully understand and be able to explain kind of what is happening as we're moving forward. Continuous learning, that's certainly another aspect, and I think it's more around the Blameless core functionality around incident resolution and postmortems. But the one thing that I always like to say is that every opportunity or every incident is an opportunity to learn. And Blameless kind of strives to make sure that any incidents that you see, any postmortems you write, those are all then available to then build metrics off of, to then provide that insight around what we're doing from an incident resolution standpoint. And then identifying and automating toil. The more we're able to then understand, especially for those unplanned incidents, where we can improve by going through these exercises as a team, as an organization, we're then able to then say, okay, it looks like this is something we can automate. Maybe we need to add more alerting, maybe reduce alerting. This then allows for you to then improve from kind of an automation standpoint as well. So zooming back out, customer benefits. I think we've gone through all these different points here, but just in case you're just tuning in, these are the takeaways that we want to have for the listeners today in terms of what benefits Blameless can provide from a metrics and dashboarding standpoint, as well as the product overall. So minimizing toil. Everyone wants to minimize toil, so that's a no-brainer. The more we can kind of reduce that manual, tedious work that we can simply automate, we'll certainly want to provide those types of directions and insights through our metrics and through what your employees, your kind of engineers are doing in terms of resolving those incidents. So minimizing toil is certainly a key point there. Deeper insights, like I mentioned before, because we're having all that incident data, all those kind of critical pieces of information from the incident that typically remains in individuals' heads, we can then help kind of ease that documentation process through these incidents, through these postmortems, to then provide less surface level metrics, but more deeper insights around what we're seeing on trends, numbers, time we're spending as well. Unplanned work. This is really where, like I said before, is on this point too, in that, by having that insights around unplanned work, the amount of time we're seeing, the number of incidents we're seeing, who's being involved. This then allows for organizations to be able to plan accordingly based off the amount of unplanned work in the previous month or quarter. And then adapting to your team. Really by having the dashboarding capability within our Reliability Insights product, we just really want to provide that. And I think at a very high level, we want to help our customers move more towards that collaborative aspect of metrics, in the sense that, again, These are here to help guide us in terms of where we should allocate our resources to, how we can, be more accurate in our planning, be more reliable and confident in our planning. So this is really an area where we can then customize those views based off of the different personas and levels within your organization.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Paul, for that demo and the covering the benefits of reliability insights. So I'm going to take a really quick moment to put that in context of our broader mission here at Blameless. So essentially, the challenge that we see with every software team is that there's a huge plethora of tools across development, issue tracking, deployment, observability, incident management, collaboration, you name it. So this tends to really obscure information as well as opportunities for improvement. So what our goal is really to consume information across all of these tools and provide a dynamic shared service level view. And then we provide guardrails around things like driving a process around adopting service level objectives, standardizing incident resolution tasks that need to happen during the heat of the moment, as well as automating the toil out of learning. So the goal is to really help teams mitigate the impact of unplanned work by automatically collecting and standardizing data around incidents and postmortems so that teams can respond, learn, and improve. This then helps teams intelligently prioritize planned work, which includes balancing new feature development with reliability efforts such as fixing tech debt. So we do that through service level objectives and other SRE principles that bring real measurement to that process instead of guesswork. So essentially, we bridge and integrate your visibility into planned and unplanned buckets of work with the goal of improving performance across the entire software lifecycle. Next slide, please. Great. So with that, we're here to partner with you on your journey to resilience. So we count ourselves really fortunate to be able to capture best practices from leading teams like Twitter and Twilio and LinkedIn on how they approach reliability insights, operational best practices, service level objectives, postmortems, and more. Lots of great content on how they scale their operations. So highly encourage you to check out our resources page to get a sense of how some of these leading edge organizations approach operations. If you'd like to start with out-of-the-box metrics as well as the rest of the Blameless platform, we also offer a free sandbox environment, so highly encourage you to check that out. And finally, if you'd like to contribute back to the community and share your own insights and how you approach operations and measurement, hit us up on Twitter at BlamelessHQ. We'd love to help share your story to help the rest of the community learn from you as well. So that concludes the presentation section of our webinar today. So we're going to open it up now for live Q&A. If you haven't yet already, please include your questions in the chat window below and we'll get those answered. We do see a few questions that have come in already, which is awesome. So first question is, for the x-axis for each of the instant graphs, why are they inconsistently spaced in that some of the dates jump sometimes by 1 day, sometimes by several days?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So from that perspective, I think that's more because of the wide time frame. You could really customize how you'd want those dates to be configured. So in terms of formatting, you could either have it with month names or individual dates, but the idea there is that it's more about the kind of idea around seeing the trends of how many incidents we're seeing. So yeah, those are all customizable, but always looking to improve and make that experience better for our customers. So
great, thank you. Another question that came in. Can your solution show who is putting most effort to resolve problems and incidents, as well as steps they took to resolve and how and whatnot? Also wanted to know integrations with other AIOps tools out in the market.
Yes. So one of the things that Blameless will do is that based off of the participants of those incidents, as well as the roles that they're associated with, Blameless then captures how much time they're spending in the incidents, and we can go ahead and display that in one of our metrics. So we actually have one out of the box showing incident participation in hours over whatever time frame you'd like. So we can then show at a very high level the number of hours that each individual is actually working on. So you have that visibility. We're always looking to improve that, get more granular in terms of that number that we're showing at the end of the day. But at least from a starting point, you get an understanding of who's actually working and involved with incidents from kind of a capacity standpoint.
Great. Another question: which reliability insights dashboards in Blameless come out of the box?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we actually have 4 out of the box. We'll have like an overview from an incident standpoint. So showing you things like incident breakdown by severity, by type, count by severity. Another one we'll have is a dashboard based on the tag category. So I had mentioned earlier that there are a number of different fields that we're capturing, tags being one of them. So based off of how you want to tag and classify those incidents, we can also have the breakdown displayed that way as well. Incident timings, which is more around the MTT type metrics. So mean time to identify, mean time to resolve, mean time to action. Those are the types of metrics you'll see there. And then the last one, to Jay's question, is around hours of incidents. So showing how much time we're spending per incident type over a course of whatever time frame we'd like, as well as understanding individual contributors and saying, okay, it looks like ANSI is working on X number of hours on these incidents, which is considerably higher than the next person's. How do we kind of divvy out the responsibilities so it's a little less stressful on one individual?
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, load balancing is so essential to prevent burnout. Cool. At this moment, not seeing any additional questions. Do feel free to continue popping those in. We'll stay on to answer any additional questions. But just wanted to say a huge thank you to all of you for joining us today. If we aren't able to get to your questions today, but they come up after the fact, feel free to reach out to us at info@blameless.com. and we'll get those answered. And again, we'll be sharing this recording with you all so you can share with your teams, and also encourage you to check out our resources and our events page to stay posted on additional insights from different industry thought leaders. Much appreciated.
Also, and I'm not so sure if we answered Jay's last questions about the integration. So with AI ops tools, so we do have integration with multiple services, and we add more based on customers' requirements. Today we integrate with different ticketing systems as Jira, and communication systems as Zoom, and also some monitoring tools and others. So I hope that it answered Jay's questions.
Yeah, specifically, a few of the AIOps solutions that and APM solutions that we integrate with today are App Dynamics, New Relic, Prometheus, Datadog. So there's a selection of different solutions that we all integrate with to be able to populate all of those metrics in an integrated view.